I had so much fun building this project, a tool rack for my garden tools. I made it out of rebar and I assembled it using a stick welder. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. If I had to do it again, I'd probably do it differently, but that's probably the same with every project. This video is not a tutorial on how to weld, but instead it's a video showing what I did to make this. If you want to watch my successes and my failures, stick around. I've discovered I have too many tools, too many hanging tools, things that need to be on a rack. And I looked at those racks in the stores you could buy that, they're well designed, but I didn't want to spend the money for what I need to hang all this. And I've decided to weld my own rack out of rebar. It's a good opportunity to practice my dreadful welding skills, but also have a little fun trying to come up with a good solution. I have a space where I walk into the door of the workshop and I can use the wall space. So I have a 2-level tool storage system in my mind as the design. I have 2 pieces of rebar and I've butt welded 2 pieces together to give me 165 inches, which is about 1 inch more to extend on either side of a truss for my storage building. Within that, I have assembled the tools as I think they should be arranged. And I've tried to tuck in tools underneath tools like the big fans of the rakes. I can tuck some smaller tools in. And I'm trying to put the heavy tools at the edges and the lighter tools in the middle, but that went out the window because I realized I'd rather have things more, at least to me, logically organized, and I'd rather try and come up with something that's a little bit better organized structurally that will hold everything just fine. So working from right to left, or from the entrance of the workshop to deeper in the workshop, starting with brooms when you walk into the workshop, then it goes to rakes, smaller hand tools, there's a post hole digger, and that's pretty heavy and I hate to have that in the middle, but I guess that's fine, it's by itself. Then I have 4 pitchforks. I didn't know I had 4 pitchforks. I have 3 steel garden rakes. I don't know where they came from. 5 rounded shovels and 4 square shovels. And these are tools that I've had scattered about. Some of them have lived here in the workshop. Others have been in a mower shed, and others have been under the house. And I've assembled them all to figure out what I have. I haven't figured out which ones are beyond repair, and I probably should toss. Right now, I just want to deal with what I have on hand. And then I realized I have shorter tools that can live behind these longer tools, and that's going to be a second set of pins that these tools are going to hang on, and that's at least the plan for what I have. I'm going to mark where I need to weld these together, and then I'm going to figure out my next step and the step after that, and I'll see what I end up with. I've been taking these shorter pieces and welding them to the longer pieces. This is making the top part of the tool rack. And so what I'm doing here is I take one piece, line it up 90 degrees, and then I have 2 pieces of wood with a little cutout in between. That acts as a spacer. And it does 2 things. It makes sure that I have this set at the correct spacing that's wide enough for the tools. Don't want it to be too narrow. But also, it pretty much holds it in place, and I don't have to clamp it down with all these magnet doodads. This one's holding the rod down to help give this a little bit more anchoring, I guess, for the lead part of this. But it's not precision work, so it doesn't have to be exact. I'm going to go ahead and weld this up and move on to the next one. Shop thermometer says it's 89 degrees, and I'm feeling every degree of it. I know it could be much hotter. For an amateur welder, this is plenty hot enough. This is looking good. I have everything welded on this side. I have some pieces to put on down there, so I'm going to slide the whole thing down now. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but there's 3 marks here. This one I intend to be a thinner piece of rebar for those type of tools that just have a single eyelet to hang on. And then these 2 are both going to be doubles. The garden tool rack is welded, or at least the upper part is. I've put it in position. It's resting on the 2 trusses here, and there's a 2x4 in the middle because right now there's no structural support. It will sag. And I did this so I could have a little bit more of a visualization of how it's going to fit here. I have these cables that go crisscross that I need all the tools to stay forward of, otherwise they get stuck behind the cables. and this second part is going to hold tools that are shorter in height, and they're going to rest behind the curtain of tools that are hanging in front of it. It's kind of funny how it's balanced. I can pull on it and it will tilt, but it's like even. In other words, the prongs that are sticking forward are just about equal to the weight of the back piece of rebar. Happy with the progress so far. I'm new to stick welding. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm having fun though. And although the welds probably look like a monstrosity to an expert welder, it is holding together, and that is my goal. This is the top part of the tool rack. This is going to be the bottom rack, or the one that sits behind the hanging tools of the top rack. And it's going to have the tools that are a little bit shorter in height. I have cut the pieces out here that I'm going to weld to this piece that's going to hang below the top shelf. I'm giving them the same spacing as I did the top one, and I did check my tools to see if that spacing is correct. This is the one item that presents a little bit of a problem, because this spacing, it allows the tool to sit in there just barely, but it doesn't rest on the actual blades. And I think that's okay enough. I have two of these, they're pretty heavy. I may not even hang them on this tool rack because they're so heavy, and just instead rest them on the ground. Haven't decided that far. Once I weld these, I'm going to weld them flat on the table so they're all the same direction. Then I'm going to connect this long piece to this piece using a series of vertical pieces coming down and angled, so that I can create a box structure that hopefully this will give it rigidity, so when it spans across the 165 inches, I think it is, that it won't droop and it can hold the tools. I know if I built this out of angle iron, that would be the smarter way to go. I did rebar. I thought it would be fun. I wasn't thinking so much structural. So this might be a lesson in engineering spans, but it's fun nonetheless. And most importantly, I get a lot of welding experience, and that is fantastic because it's fun. I finished welding the prongs for the lower part of the tool rack, and this is for the tools that are a little bit shorter. Longer tools are going to be in front and hang longer. These are angled up a little bit more than I expected them to be, but I'm okay with it. I have 3 vertical rods now attaching this lower rack to the upper rack, and as far as positioning these double prongs, I realized I'm just going to put it in between where the other ones are, and that way if there's tools hanging here, I can pull it out and hopefully not clang tools around too much. So far, all my welds have been holding up just fine. This is a little bit more critical because this bottom section is going to add structural support as this top section spans the two trusses. I'm going to add some triangle pieces to make like a bit of a box shape to give it more structural rigidity, and I'm hoping that's enough. I am having so much fun welding this together and figuring out how to do things. Like, for example, I raised this part up so that it would... Oh, I just noticed the weld came apart there. Oh, okay. Found a weld that doesn't work. Okay, so I need to redo that one. But I raised this up so it was even with this one to keep it even. And I think I need to go re-weld that right now. When I put the tool rack on a pair of sawhorses, I wanted to see how much this would rock back and forth. And the back part is rigid, solid, it's firm. The front part considerably less so. And I think I should have done a couple of things different. One of them is This long support probably should be at the leading bar where more of the weight for the tools will be, at least for the upper rack. As a workaround, I'm going to take a small piece of rebar and I'm going to connect it like that to give it some more reinforcement, and hopefully that'll give it a little bit more stability. After I got everything together, I put it on sawhorses and it had a lot of wobble to it. So I added this diagonal brace here, which I was thinking the diagonal brace that was coming up from the back side to the back rod should have crossed over to the front rod since it doesn't block any of the hangers. And so I didn't do that. So I had a smaller piece of rebar, I put it to the side, and the difference in how solid this is fantastic. I mean this is one of these things that lets you know that structural engineering is a real thing, and it matters how you join stuff together. So I was thrilled that happened. I can push down right here, and like this thing, you know, it's moving a little bit, but I can't push it down. I mean, it's fantastic how strong this is. I'm sure at some point of force it'll fail. Now, if I push on the front, it does flip forward, and that's because the back part kicks back, but this is going to be against a wall when it's over there, so I don't think that's a concern much. With this newfound stability, my next task is to go over all of my horrible welds and grind off the slag or wire brush off the slag so I can paint this. I put these diagonal pieces on here and this cross one that goes to the front bar, which adds a lot of stability. And if I just push on the back bar, it's like it doesn't go down like at all, or at least it doesn't feel like it. You might see a little bend there. The front does bend forward because the back kicks out, but this back part's going to be against a wall, so I think that'll be fine or good enough for garden tools. But yeah, doing those diagonals, that really made a difference. My gosh. Put a coat of primer on the tool rack and I realized I made a mistake. I need to, at each end, put two little pegs that will fit over the end of the trusses, and that'll keep this rack from moving, one end moving off either truss as time goes by, using it and putting tools on, taking tools off. I don't want to have the rack slip off one of the trusses. I wanted to get the measurement for these pegs as accurate as possible, so I put that 2x4 up in the middle to act as a bridge to hold up the tape measure, and I came up with the number 164¼ inches, and that's over the end of one truss to over the end of another truss. So I think I'm going to do 165 inches, and that will give me an 1/8 inch on either side of wiggle room. I have these two in place, and I put this piece of metal here. There's the tape measure, which is right at the inside part of the two pegs, And I even have it suspended on blocks to keep the tape measure straight. And so here I am at this end, and if I bring the tape measure up to the end, I'm exactly at 164.5 inches. I'm going to mark a spot to put these pegs. So I have these hoses that were under my house, and they are hoses that don't have proper connections. I think it looks like I tried to do some repairs on them. That was probably unsuccessful because I have different hoses now. And I think I can repurpose these though. And I'd like to cut them and have them coat where the tools are going to hang on the tool rack. Just gives a little protection to the tool rack, and I guess to the tool. I'm pointing to the tools themselves. And I'm not sure how much I need, so I need to measure how many the total linear footage of the tool rack and measure how much I have of each hose type. I would like to have all of them the same color. I have a beige hose, and I have 3 green hoses. So I'm guessing I'm going to have green hoses on this thing, and I just need to measure what the linear footage is so I can figure out the best way to divvy this up. I took these hoses out to the lawn and measured them. One of them is 50 feet, and the other one is 68 feet. And I think the reason it's weird that it's 68 feet is it's been cut off. It was probably a 100-foot hose, or 75 feet, I guess. I'm not sure which it is. But these hoses are damaged. My gray one here, or beige one, has this fix here in the middle, so it's probably still workable, and I just stopped using it. It probably leaks a little bit. So that might be usable, but I'm going to see if I need to cut apart the 50-foot hose or the 68-foot hose to go on the tool rack, and hopefully I can use all of one so it has a uniform color scheme. That would be nice. It's not necessary. We'll see. The hose bonanza. These are 4.5 inches, and these are just a little bit over a foot. So let's just say these are 1 foot each. These are half a foot. Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, a little tall. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 linear feet of hose will coat this whole thing. Not even close to any of the lengths I have. Since I can choose whichever hose, I just need to decide, do I want the flat green style or this braided green style? It doesn't matter. I kind of like the braided green. It looks kind of cool. But the flat green looks a little more consistent. Decisions. I want to cover the pegs with this old garden hose, but I was uncertain if I could have it go on the back where the tools would hit. I came up with this, cut a slit in the middle of the hose, that's the gap portion, and then cut a flap that wraps around rebar. And for this first one, I just cut the slit straight across, and when I put it on, I realized that this flap barely goes over the rebar. Instead, I should cut it off center, or more like a U shape, so there's more flap to go over the rebar since it's not straight in line with the pegs. Not the biggest deal. I will cut these straight here because the pegs are straight in line at the bottom. It's not completely horridly ugly. It's just moderately horridly ugly. I finished cutting all the pieces for the short pegs, but then I thought, what can I do with the remaining part of the hose I have? There's just a little bit left. And on top of the trusses, where the end of the tool rack is going to hang, I thought, well, why don't I just take a piece of hose, cut a slit down it, and slip it over the metal. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of looking for excuses of where to use the remaining bits of hose. With all the pieces of hose cut to coat the tool rack tongs, this is how much hose I have left over. I need to paint the part of the tool rack that is not going to be covered by hose. I figure there's no point in painting the part that's going to be basically protected. I found this green paint, and if it's still any good, I think it's about a decade old. It matches the hose. That might be nice to have everything green. And then I think I might make the diagonal parts yellow because they remind me of the sun rays in the morning. This is a tool rack for garden tools, and gardens need the sun to grow, so yellow might be a nice touch. I don't know. I'm just making this up as I go. The garden tool rack has been painted, and I've given it a definite substandard paint job, and that's okay. This is the red primer, and it's going to be covered by the hoses, and then the green part is more visible, and that kind of matches the hoses. The diagonals, they're yellow. Those are like sun rays. When it's mounted up on the wall, it's going to look like sun rays, and since it's garden tools, we have a sunrise. I figured that was nice and fitting. The next step is to put these garden hoses on all the tool pegs. The short pegs had a center cut, so it didn't matter which way I put these, but these ones have an offset cut, and that's because this rebar isn't straight in line, but it's forward. So it does matter which direction I put this. I want the flap to be able to cover that crossbar rebar, like you see here. These hose lengths are remarkably uneven. Hey, that looks marginally acceptable. That angle shows just how uneven all these are. I don't even know if that's worth fixing. I'm going to fix it. I was going to run a string to get this nice and straight and feel how far the rebar is to make sure that I'm not cutting too far. So I'm just going to do it for each piece, eyeball it, and call it good enough for homemade. Good enough. It's homemade. I think it's time to now put the rack up onto the trusses. Let's try that again. Nope. was hoping to be able to push the rack through that truss to get room to get over on this one, and I have cut a piece too close for that plan. And it would probably be a lot smarter if I had help on this. Foolish to do this myself. My intent is just to lift the tool rack, put some blocks under it so it can be pushed into that truss some to make room for this end to swing around. But right now, the pegs on the end are just on the edge of the support, so I've positioned the ladder right underneath here in case I make a mistake over there and accidentally dislodge it from this side. Again, it really would have been smarter to get someone to help me on this. That should give me some sliding room. With those blocks lifting that part of the tool rack, I should have enough room to slide it forward and give myself enough room to get around on this side to anchor it over here. And I know that when I slide it forward, those blocks are probably going to fall, and this whole thing might scare me a bit, but we'll see. It worked. On the left side of the rack, the pegs are over the truss. And on that side, the pegs are over the truss. You just see it right there. The rack just happens to touch this truss where I can put a support on that, and then I need to put a support where the cable and the end piece connects. The tool rack is mounted and secured in place. I just need to add a few additional supports to keep it from wiggling. It has a little bit of a wiggle here. I might put a piece of wood right behind here to give additional support, but I'm not sure if that's necessary. I think my next step is to put my tools up here and see what it's like with the weight of the tools on the rack and if the whole thing falls apart or not. Fingers crossed. The tool rack is done. All the tools are in place. It feels sturdy. It feels firm. I've decided not to hang the big, heavy pickaxes. I think it's just too much weight. It makes more sense to leave that on the ground. I'm pretty happy with this. Time will tell if I come into the workshop one day and the whole thing has collapsed and there's a bunch of tools on the ground, and if that's the case, I will start again and take what I've learned from this project and apply it toward the rebuild. But until then, I'm pretty happy with it.